Alright, welcome back to Music Theory 101, the basic elements of music. In our last lesson we looked at basic introduction to pitch and letter names, and this one we're looking at the piano keyboard. Now, you may say like this guy here, you're like, well, I don't play piano. Like, he's like freaking out because he doesn't play piano. Well, I don't play piano either, but using a piano keyboard is one of the most helpful ways we can introduce basic music theory concepts. Because as, you're looking at these concepts, you can see them relate across the keyboard. And now this is not a full-size keyboard. Obviously the keyboard will go much further this way, much further this way. But in the last lesson we talked about how there are 8 notes, or 7 letters, and every 8th note it repeats the octave. So as you can see in this keyboard, right here is middle C. If I was to go up an octave, well, there's another C right there, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 notes that make the octave there. In the last lesson, if you remember with this staircase here, I said that in between there will be flats and sharps, and this is where we get them, because flats and sharps come from this keyboard aspect. See, these black notes in the middle are your flats and your sharps. So on your keyboard we have white notes and black notes. The black notes are named after the white notes they touch. So for example, this note here will be a version of a C or a version of a D. So when you take a white note and go left to the black note, it's called a flat. So if I take this D here, or looking at this little D right there, and I go there, right here to this black note, this is D flat. And that would fit right here in our staircase. There'd be a D flat right here. So if I was to enter in another note, let me go back. If I was to enter in another note on our staircase here, I'd say D flat. And it would look like this. So now, there's another step in our staircase. And as you can see, this is a much smaller step. It's very narrow because it's not a whole step. It's like a little half step idea here. In the same way, if I was to take a white note and go right to the black note, it's called a sharp. So same concept. If I was to take this D and go, or actually let's take this C. If I was to take this C and go right, it'd be called a C sharp. So now between here we have both D flat and C sharp. Now this creates an interesting paradox, because how can this note here be both C sharp and D flat? Well, the answer is enharmonics. So enharmonics are notes that have the same pitch but different names. So for example, this note here, if I was to play it on a keyboard, that's a C flat, but if I was to play this note, same note, it's now a D flat. Why? Well, because I said it is. So that might sound confusing, but the only thing that makes a C sharp different from a D flat is what the musician says it is. So if they're using it as a D flat, it's a D flat. If they're using it as a C sharp, it's a C sharp. And this is a very confusing concept, but it's just what it is. So if I was in the key of B flat, I'd need a B flat right here. I wouldn't need an A sharp because I need a B flat to make it B flat. But if I was in the key of A sharp, sounds the same way, but I need an A sharp now because I'm in A sharp. I'm not in B flat. So basically, you can now use these same black notes. There's 5 different black notes, and these 5 black notes give you almost every single sharp or flat you need in just 5 notes, because they can be the same note. And again, that's called enharmonics. So here I have it kind of broken down in this way. E flat and D sharp are the same pitch but called different names. You might say, well, why is this important? This just seems confusing. Well, it's important because, like I was just saying, these notes indicate your key signatures, and it helps organize music. And having enharmonics in this way allows us to have multiple notes in a small octave stand, like an 8-note scale, C to C, has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 different pitches. But we also have these and these 3 that give us 5 additional pitches we can pull from. So if we want a D flat, we have it. If we want a C sharp, we have it. And it's all right here in the same number of keys. And that's why it's important to kind of understand. And so whenever you're looking at a key signature, which will come up in a later lesson, and you're looking at the key of E flat, you're looking at this E flat, you got a G, you got a B flat, and there's your things. But a different key, say E natural now needs this note D to be a D sharp. But before in E flat, this was an E flat. But now that we're in E, it's becoming a D sharp. So it's the same notes. It's just depending on how you look at them. And that all will be explained a little later. But for now, this is just a basic starting point foundation. So if we were to go a little deeper, these notes that change are called accidentals. So they're notes that do not fit in a given key, and they're indicated by a flat, a sharp, or a natural. For example, if I was in the key of B flat again, my B flat key has an E flat in it. So if I was to play the B flat scale, I go B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G, A, B flat, and I kind of go like that. But if for some reason I didn't want an E flat, even though it's in the key, I wanted an E natural. Instead, I would write E natural. And this would indicate that something has changed to change it from to. It would change it just a little bit by indicating that note. So again, here's another example I wrote down. If you're in the key of B flat, C is not flat or sharp, but is natural. But if in the key of B flat there is a C sharp, so instead of there is, that would be called an accidental. And like I said, some accidentals can be naturals. So on this keyboard here, say you're in the key of C sharp. That's every single black key. Da, 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 da. And you say, well, these 2 are white keys. Well, they are, but they're acting as sharps. So you take the F, that would be a F natural, and call it an E sharp. So it's a little confusing, but this is the basic concept that you can start digesting. And this will be explained a little later. But to kind of wrap it all up, here's your keyboard. You have your natural pitches on the bottom. If you were to go left, this note would be called a flat of this note. So if I was to go left from the D, this would be D flat. If I was to go right, it'd be called D sharp. Likewise, this note can be E flat and D sharp. And where this gets really confusing is it even translates into white notes. So E sharp is F, E sharp, or E flat. So this is F, but it can also be E sharp, and it can be, well, it can't be anything flat because there's a black note in front of this one, so it can't go back. So this is not G flat. This one's G flat. But up here, C flat is right here. So that's how you can have kind of accidentals explained on a keyboard. So to kind of wrap it up, because we're approaching about 10 minutes here, let me just give one more example. So say you're in the key of A flat. Nice A flat key, and you were all of a sudden wanting to go from A flat into the key of D, which are very different keys. You'd have to change the A flat to an A, so you create an accidental A flat to A. A flat has a D flat here, so you'd have to change the D flat into a D, and every other note would have to shift, and so you would write in little accidentals in order to change the keys. In our next lesson, we'll kind of explore this idea further and explain how these notes relate to each other and the idea of whole steps versus half steps. But for now, I wanted to kind of explain where you get all these notes. If you go up here to our staircase, let me grab our guy. Come on, guy. Don't get stuck again. So, well, there you go. So, as this... Oops. Well, that's awkward. So, as this guy... Oh, come on. Not now. Well, there he goes. Alright. As this guy's going up the steps, he has these big whole steps. But now in between them, you're going to have these little half steps. So instead of da 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 da, you now have da 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 da, and you kind of have that half step in between these whole steps. Which honestly, now that I think about it, is not the best way to talk about it, because if you want to get real technical, this is a half step, but I will explain that in a future video. For now though, here's the basic concepts of sharps and flats. These two notes are the same pitch, but they're used in different ways to create different keys. So therefore you can play and expand music with just 3 different notes. So in 3 different notes, you have 4 different possibilities. And that's a really cool thing, but it gets a little confusing if you don't wrap your head around it. So as always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, those who are part of New Hope Worship Ministries. Leave a comment on this video, or just, come talk to me, whatever works. And I'll see you in the next video.